Alright, in this lesson we're going to be taking a look at basic rendering inside of Max. Now, this is just going to be enough information for you guys to take these scenes that you have now animated, and you have put materials on, and you have lit, and you've adjusted cameras, and all this great stuff, so that now you can render these out, produce them into movies, which you could show off to your friends, show off to your girlfriend, boyfriend, whatever, or maybe
give it to us,
send it to us for an assignment, or something crazy. You never know.
You never know.
Yeah, you could do all kinds of stuff with them. So, just a really quick thing here. What I'm looking at is the same bouncy ball scene that we were playing with earlier on in this VTM. I've just added a few materials and a light to it. If we render it out, you'll notice there's a little bit of a shadow effect going on. So just a quick scene to show a cooler final result. And really quickly here, what I'm going to do is just mention that up until now, we've just been using Quick Render, which is indeed tied into the main rendering engine and all that, but essentially it's there just so we can preview our objects. What we're going to be using in this lesson is the Render Scene button, which is just on the other side, which gives us this huge list of information. It can be very frightening maybe the first time you see it, but not to worry. One, this is very simple, and two, for basic renders, you don't need to know every single thing in here. So let's go ahead and start talking about this. At the very top in common parameters, we have the time output. Now this is where we can choose to render single frames, an active time segment, which is right now frames 0 to 100, a time range, such as only frames 0 to 50, or specific frames, which down here, this will always be here until you change it. This is 1, 3, 5-12. This essentially means you'll be rendering frame 1, frame 3, and frame 5 through 12. So you can use that combination to get any order of frames that you need. Just use your commas and your dashes. You also have every nth frame, so you can use this. Right now it's set to 1, so you're rendering every single frame. Set that to 2, and you're going to render every other frame, 3, every third, and so on and so on. You have file number base, which is going to control how the files are named as they're rendered. Now down from here we have output size. If we do our quick render, we do get a huge 640 by 480 rendering. That might be just a little bit too big. So what I'm going to do is bring this down to 320 by 240. I can just click on that because that's a prefabricated number, and you'll notice my width and height change. If I want to, I can adjust these manually, and you'll notice my image aspect is going to adjust as I do these. So just be aware that you can set these by hand if you want to. Also, you have a drop down here with this huge list of prefabricated settings. So let's say if you know you're going to be producing to video in North America, you'd be using NTSC D1, for example, or in Europe, as another example, you'd be using PAL. So just make sure you do use those if necessary. So this is great, though, because like if we know we're going to be using NTSC, we don't have to worry about remembering the exact resolution or aspect ratio. We can just select this, and everything else is set up for us. So just a cool thing there. I'm going to put this back on custom now and set it back to 320 by 240. Down from here we have some options, and I'm not going to be talking about these really because they're for advanced more features. We'll probably talk about those in a later VTM. For now, I do want to mention a couple of quick things. If you're going to have some back faces showing and you don't have two-sided materials activated, you can force two-sided from here. And also, if you are rendering to NTSC for some reason, be sure you render to fields. Just want to bring those up. Next we have advanced lighting, which you'll notice we didn't talk about advanced lighting, so we're going to skip it here as well. And then down from here we have the render output, and this is a very important area. This is where you determine the type of rendering you're going to make, the name of the file, and so on. So let's go ahead and click on Files. And for starters, we have all these different types of renderings we can do. We can do AVI movies, we can do JPEGs, we can do TIFFs and Targas. A quick thing I'd like to mention. We're going to be demonstrating how to render out with AVIs. Because right now you're probably working, if you're beginning, you're probably working with smaller videos. If you're going to be rendering something that's going to take more than an hour or so, I would not recommend rendering to an AVI. Why is that, Joel?
Well, you could maybe be rendering all the way up to 50 frames, say you have 100 frames, you get halfway done and suddenly Max crashes, Windows crashes, something happens.
A lot of things can crash.
A lot of things could crash.
The power could go out.
Yes, and then you would lose all of that.
Absolutely. I mean, computers do crash, it's what they do, and if you are rendering an AVI when a crash occurs, that's it.
You lose it all.
You lose it all. You have to start all over again. So, I mean, you could be, and trust me when I say I've been there and done this, you could be hours into a render, and all of a sudden the thing crashes, and you just have to begin all over again.
That's a sad day.
If you have a huge file, then you need to render out to a series of frames, such as TIFFs or Targas, or if you only need a preview and you don't need incredible quality, maybe even JPEGs, then you can bring those back together into a single movie using Video Post inside of 3ds Max, or there are also several different programs that will read frame stacks. After Effects or Combustion will also read frame stacks as well, so just something to keep in mind. Now, the reason, like I said, you would use frame stacks is maybe you get halfway through a 10,000 frame render. You're at frame 5,000 and the power switches off at your house. Well, as soon as it comes back on, if you want to, you can maybe re-render frame 5,000, but other than that, you can continue on right from where you left off. So just a nice way to keep everything from really going south on you in a hurry. You can go ahead and render out to frame stacks. In this case, as I mentioned, we're only going to be using AVIs, because this is going to be a small, quick render. So let's go ahead and give this a name. We'll call this Bounce. And it's going to ask you what kind of video compression you want. We use DivX Pro 5, so we'll go ahead and click OK with that. And you'll notice the name does pop up down here. Then we have the virtual frame buffer. Now, up until this point, the render window that appears, we haven't really known what to call that. That is called the virtual frame buffer. And actually, if I come all the way back up here, let's make sure we're still on single frame. I'll uncheck Save File. So this window we see here, this is the virtual frame buffer. And as a quick thing, we can view separate channels in here. We can view our alpha channel. We can clear the thing out if we need to. And that's really about all we need. Also, let me go ahead and bring this up. We can save out a specific image to a specific file. Like, you render out something, you'd be like, man, that looks great, I want to send that to my friend or something. You can just come over here and just click Save and save that out. So you can decide when you're about to start rendering whether or not the virtual frame buffer will be visible while you render. For now, we'll go ahead and leave it up. We have a checkbox for net rendering, which we're not going to talk about right now. Skip existing images. So maybe you've got some of these already rendered. It'll skip over anything that's already there. So a very handy thing. Down from here, let's go ahead and check Save File. And for now, I'm also going to check Active Time Segment, which will be frames 0 through 100. So down from here we have render elements, which I'm not going to be talking about. It's just going to be for compositing, so we can render out different elements on top of one another. We have the current render, so if we have a different render loaded, say like Pixar RenderMan or
Brazil,
there's so many of them. We can set them up right here. We have email notifications. You can actually set this up so that Max will automatically email you when your render is done or if something goes wrong. If your render fails for whatever reason, Max is nice enough to send you an email if you set this up, and we're not going to be talking about that here and now, but just wanted to bring that up. In fact, I had a buddy for a while that, I guess just to prove he could, had this set up to one of those email systems that goes to a cell phone messaging service. So Max would actually send him a text message on his cell phone letting him know when his renders were done. Nobody was really impressed. I think he just did it to prove that he could.
That is pretty cool, though.
It is cool. It's one of those things. It's like, I'll dog the guy because I couldn't do it, but do I wish I could do it? Yeah. Anyway, so we have some settings for Max's default scanline buffer, and we're not going to be talking about these. Like I said, this is just a basic rendering video. So with that, we're ready to go ahead and render. We have some settings down here in the bottom for production, draft, and active shade. Production will be just fine for what we're doing. Also, very important field right here. What viewport is going to render? There is nothing more painful than waiting 2 hours for a render only to find out that you rendered the top view. That hurts.
Yes, it does.
That makes you want to cry, and I know this from experience. So, make sure that you have the proper camera selected. When you're ready, hit render. And here we go. I have the thing coming back. So we're encoding. That's because we
almost done.
Yeah, it's because we have DivX installed right now. So with that, we can now open this guy up. But how are we going to view this? I mean, the virtual frame buffer doesn't allow us to actually see animations. To view these, we're going to need to open up the RAM player. So underneath rendering, we come down to RAM player. And here's the RAM player. Now, this thing is it's very handy, very useful, and it will play back very fast after things load into the RAM. You have 2 channels, which you can use for comparisons. We won't really be demonstrating that, but You can load 2 separate movies in here and scrub back and forth to show the differences between the two. So let me go ahead and take channel A and open. And let's go up under 3ds Max, and here's the Bounce AVI. We can choose a new resolution if we would like. So we'll go ahead and just click on whatever it has in default, and it's going to load all of these frames into the RAM so that we can access them however we want. And we can stop loading anytime, so we're just waiting for this to load up. It's almost done.
Almost done.
Can you believe how much memory is available in this computer?
That's insane.
That's just insane. And we're using 18 whole megs of the 2,000 we have available. Oh, it actually filled up one of the little blue bars. Did you see that?
That's awesome.
That's fabulous. Okay, so now we can hit play.
Hey, very cool.
And we can actually see the animation playing back. We can also play backwards. We can go frame by frame. If we want to, we can go between just automatic playing like so. And finally, we can rewind to the very beginning and ends of the animation. So that's pretty much all I want to show. That's it. You've seen how to render out. You've seen how to take your movie and preview it inside of Max. Now, since we did render out to an AVI, you could just as well go into where you saved it and open it up with whatever your favorite media player is. If you want to open it in QuickTime, or maybe open it up in Windows Media Player, whatever you might have. So really, with that, this lesson is over. So, thanks a lot, everyone.